Yo, 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 what is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy B, and today we're going to talk all things decorations. And I'm going to give you my honest take on, do I think this is going to end up being good for the game? Will it be bad for the game? Is it going to widen the pay gap? Is it not as bad as some people think? Is it as potentially bad as maybe some people think? And try and look at this from an objective viewpoint after we show you a number of facts. As always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us up, because it helps out a lot. Thanks. Okay. So here's the landscape agreement event that was running for 4 days from the 21st to the 25th that had just finished. We see that there is a bundle option, obviously, for it, the Wondrous Architect, that allows you to get blueprints that, again, can be utilized. Decoration exchange, or you can exchange some blueprints, not blueprints, but blueprints for a decoration blueprint of your choice. You get some options on decorations / additional armor, some clothing equipment that you can attach. You have some percentages for buffs. Here, there is a 0.5%. When we look at another one at the same level, and it also says legendary, this is at 0.2%. That to me is somewhat interesting, because why would you not have them titled differently, or have this be epic as an example? To distinguish, or some kind of name distinction. And I only say that because you already have a baseline of that in the game with how heroes operate. And so being able, and even artifacts as well, excuse me. So, like you have kind of a system in place that utilizes said structure, but now you're like changing it up for these things. That one just doesn't make it. I almost like the skins have different tiers too as well, but again, I haven't had a chance to look at that recently. So point overall is that's just a little wonky to me, if you will. So, however, showcasing that there's different tiers for the decorations. Okay, fine. So here is a sheet I'm going to show you that Simos, I think it's Simos, I actually didn't ask him exactly how to pronounce the name, so we're just going to go with that. But Simos was kind enough to provide me a sheet or the stats that he had put out when doing some data testing for the decorations versus what would be a projected T6 troop. And we have another screenshot to show you as well. We're going to read off a summary and then some other stats that we're going to show you before I can get to what my take is on everything. So, in short, from left to right, these are base stats from in-game up to T5. The T6 stats, which is this column, is a projected estimate of what that would be based on the average percentage increase from each tier, right? So you'd figure out, what's the average percent increase here? Okay, well, from this to that, right, 12%, from this to that, 18%, from this to that, 15%, so on and so forth, right? So, again, that's just kind of my general understanding there. So, again, you get to this point where you look at what the T6 projected would be. These are the stats, right? So you did the 221, 388, 175, 264, 123. That's going for HP attack, phys defense, magic defense, and, oh gosh, I'm forgetting what MS is. I wanted to say magic resistance, but move speed. Thank you. There we go. Hard. That took a minute. But okay. So then you look at what the 5 decorations are estimated to come out to. Here, you're getting attack, physical defense, magic defense. 25%, 25%, 25%. And then there's the 15% damage dealt, right? That's playing in as well. So when you look at the numbers, right, at least from the 3 that we're looking at, you can see on here 5 decorations, right? Estimated 365 attack. That's 23 away from the estimated attack of a T6. So you're near T6 on attack. When you're looking at magic defense, physical defense, you would be exceeding that. of T6. And I think that's why you see people talking about how having 5 decorations basically puts you in some T6 categories. Maybe not all of them, but very much some of them. And then you see some of the extras here, right? Some of the extra buffs. And then we get to the bottom, and you're looking at combat effectiveness, right? So, right, T2 is 5% stronger than T1. Okay, T5, 59% stronger than T1. T6, right, based on the above stats, would be 86% stronger than T1. 5 decos, 85% stronger. But then here's the kicker. If you have T5 unlocked, 5 decorations would be 26% stronger than T5, right? That's in between a T3 and a T4 percentage, at least when it comes to versus T1. But you could see T6 would be 27% stronger than T5. And you're at 26% stronger. So when you hear people talking about how the 5 decorations, if you're getting those 0.5% ones, I believe it is, and to get what would be your 25% attack defense, and then your 15% on the damage dealt. You look at the numbers, right? And again, if everything's accurate, you can easily see why some people would be, I don't know if I want to say worried, but at least like, damn, eyes are popping out. Like, it's pretty straightforward there. So then we get to the next screen. In this screenshot, this shows a little bit more of a breakdown in some other areas, right? You still have your HP attack, average defense, march speed, physical defense, magic defense, and then damage dealt, which we didn't see in the last one. But going off the summary here, right, it says the raw stats difference, 25% attack and defense, will increase our current performance by another 8 to 9%. The damage dealt, 15%, is going to help us deal an estimated 15 to 21% more damage while taking a lot less sev wounded. We are looking at a potential 20 to 30% performance increase in reports of someone who maxes 5 of these reliquary artifacts. And then you can see some of the verdicts here, right? 8 to 9, verdict, 5% more damage dealt, right? To help us deal 7% more damage overall. We also did get 15%, 40% less sevs in the end, right? Those are for some tests that they, right, have anticipated. Or sorry, I think these are ones that they actually did test, right? For at least the confirmed test column. So again, right now, okay, now let's summarize. Decorations, right, which is kind of what the premium tier, right, ones, right, the ones that give you the highest amount of percent for the stat buff at level 1, that obviously scales. You get 25% attack, 20% defense, and then 50% damage dealt. You can have 5 decorations equipped at a time. Premium decorations offer 5% attack, 5% defense. Those are maxed, right? And then 3% damage dealt. Average cost to max a decoration via Wondrous Architecture Bundle, right? This does not mean that you can't do it for a bit cheaper, right? But it would be about $2,000. The average cost to max 5 premium decorations is a little over $10,000. Via Universal Blueprints, right, which is the WA bundle, right, Wondrous Architect. Now, you can get a discount on some levels if you spend on the Landscape Agreement event, which is the Landscape Aid bundle, right, 385 to max, right, which we know that is just per standard bundles. And then T5 plus 5 decorations will estimate to around T6 strength, right, for some of the categories. And then some of the stats here, just kind of simply put, 8 to 9% better from the 24% attack defense, which is 8.5% average, 15 to 21% better with the 15% damage dealt buff, which is around 18% average. And then you have an estimated performance increase, which is the total that we looked at from the previous sheet, of around 26.5% once 5 decorations are maxed. And then, as an example, the 20K report will become a 25.3K report, and a 100K report will become 126.5K, right? That was what was estimated. So, before I give you my thoughts, let's look at some stats in some other areas, right? So, Yami had sent me this as an example. If you were to get all of the behemoths, right, the total for that would be 7% Legion attack, 3% Legion defense, 3% HP, 3% march speed, 5% load cap, 3% hero, right? But obviously the main ones is the 3% attack, 7% attack, 3% defense, 3% HP, right? It's a lot more for the 5 max decorations. Okay, fair enough. If you were to complete College of Order or your academy, right, you get, at least on the comparable stats, 50% Legion attack, defense, HP. Okay. Nothing about damage dealt, right? So if you look at this, you're basically getting half of that, arguably more than half of that if you factor in the damage dealt as well. And I guess it depends on at least what you consider for the HP, but at least more than half when it comes to attack and defense, and then including the 15% damage dealt as well, right? So it's a little more than half of what you're getting just from that. Okay, interesting. And then we look at like SVIP, right? So for level 15 or VIP 15, right, the relevant stats that you're getting 5% attack, 5% defense, no damage dealt. When you get to SVIP, it's 10% Legion attack that you end up getting. And I think that was the only main difference. I don't know if it's 10% defense as well. I didn't see that on the page that was listed, right? So again, if that's accurate, that's interesting to see as well. Because it would show that at least all of these other things that are completed in the game, with the exception of one, right, being your academy, would be more buffs and bonuses than these other, than at least 2 out of these 3 areas. It's just interesting, right, to look at it. So my thoughts on everything. I will be honest. I do want to be able to hear from the community, and I'm going to ask people. I wanted just to kind of put out a video first to share some thoughts and to kind of give everyone a baseline and an intro level and an entry level introduction into decoration, so there's at least a little bit more information out there. The worry for me has always been, number one, can free-to-play access and max everything in the game? It doesn't mean that free-to-play is going to be able to do it as quickly as someone who spends money. But is everything accessible to them as it should be? Whether that's immediately or at some kind of a delayed time, right? And that kind of goes in the example I've provided before about, you know, how I just believe every legendary hero, every legendary artifact, right, should be accessible through free-to-play means, right? There shouldn't be anyone that's gated, with the exception of, like, let's say a new hero comes out and they're not adding it to the gold chest, and you do something like, okay, well, we'll add it to the gold chest in a month or two, and then free-to-play can access it, right? But you're still giving the people that want to spend early access to it, right? And then also they can continue to spend and buy it. That doesn't go away. It's just, in addition, it's added in a gold chest, as an example. So something like that, right, where you would see like a delayed ad, right? So you're still giving the spenders some advantage, right? Some benefit, right, to spending in that, and completely fine with that. But that's just kind of the example I would give there. And so if you don't have everything that is accessible through free-to-play means, and isn't something that would take you 20 years, because let's be fair, right, to max. And again, I'm not saying everything, but, you know, keep in your mind relative time spent to what you're getting. And that's why I'm saying it's going to be interesting when I go and I ask the free-to-play chat of the top free-to-play players in the game, you know, hey, were you even able to unlock 5 of the premium decorations? Okay. What are you estimating is probably going to be your rate of investment, right? Until you maybe get 1 of these decorations max leveled. Those are, I think, going to tell us a little bit more, so we have more of a clear understanding and expectation on what that's going to look like in the future. But I will say, the percentage increases on this seems like a lot. It seems almost like an unexpected amount. And the fact that obviously, you know, they have the cost value that they do. I mean, I'd have to compare that with other kingdom builders to see if that's a little bit cheaper or a little bit more than others. But what I will say is that when you introduce things in a game that take so long for free-to-play to be able to, at times, access, depending on what they are, and then B, start to actually level them up, and C, max level however many they can, that's when you really get a good indicator on not only how free-to-play friendly a game is, but how much are the developers valuing that cohesive relationship between the community of free-to-play and for people that spend. And to me, I've always been a very big believer that you need free-to-play players, right? Just as much as you need people that spend in the game, obviously for the reasons of, to be fair, and I think bluntly speaking, keeping the game afloat. However, I do not believe that the gap should be so egregious and so wide that it almost deflates any level of motivational engagement from free-to-play players. And that to me is, I think, my biggest worry here, is when I see things like this, it kind of gives me these Infinity Kingdom vibes. For those of you that played IK, or if you've played other kingdom builders where games have started to introduce these things, because this isn't something where you have to go and complete a quest or some very long objective where you have to sink some time investment in to get this reward of a decoration, right? This is basically a skin that they've added into the game, and they've attached a flat buff stat to it and said, here's how much it costs. Respectfully, and I think objectively, what feels to me like a lack of creativity, a lack of ingenuity, to add something that is just so simple, it's so straightforward, and it gives the impression of how hard are we trying here. I think that's fair to say. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that meme that was on the COD memes channel when that war pet came out, and it looked like all they did was just change the color tone instead of coming out with a new war pet, like a unique design. And someone put a meme up of them, and I don't know if it was real or not, but I mean, it could have fooled me. But it was them going into some editor, like Photoshop or something, and doing like a quick color shading, like gradient change or something. And it looked like it took them less than a minute to do, right? And then bam, it's like they popped it. That's what it reminds me of. And what I'm saying is, to the developers, that is not a good look. That is not the image, the perception that you want to output to the community. Right? That's where it starts to get worrisome. And I'll tell you from my experience in Infinity Kingdom, this was one of those things where they started adding things and making some unnecessary changes and didn't do certain things in a timely manner that they should have. And a lot of these things just kind of started to snowball. And I imagine for some of you out there, you've played a kingdom builder where you've noticed some of these similarities, or some of these things happened in a previous game within the genre you've played, and it turns you off. And that's the one thing that I don't think anyone wants to happen, is to start feeling like there's a turnoff, like there's a massive disconnect, or the snowball is really starting to snowball, and not in a good direction, but in the other direction. And that's, I think, what we don't want to happen. And that's why when I look at something like this, it just, it leaves me with more questions. It leaves me with more caution, and it leaves me with, sadly, more worry than it does hopeful expectations. And so, again, I'd love to know what you guys think, right? Let me know in the comments below. Again, do you like the ad? Do you think it's good for the game? Do you think it could be good if they did this or that? Or no, it's too soon to add something like this in? Or why did we get this when there's other things we could have got? Or no, they absolutely shouldn't have added this. I'd like to know what you think and why. Because for me, I'm absolutely on the side of the fence where I just don't know, like, who was asking for this, right? That to me is one of my next questions. Who asked for this? I don't know. I mean, again, maybe someone can point me to like a massively upvoted suggestion that I missed, right? That was just the talk of the town. And for as much as I'm hanging out in Gen Chat, I didn't see anyone say anything about it. Maybe the spenders, maybe the mid-heavy spenders, right? That maybe have access to VIP or don't, and they're close to. Maybe they're the ones asking for something. I don't know. And that kind of gets me. And I'm not saying that you can never add something if no one's suggesting it or no one's asking for it. But I do think there's a big difference between doing something like fixing something that has just like been plaguing the community, even if there's not a suggestion or you're not getting a lot of requests about it in a KVK or in something else that would be incredibly warm welcomed, versus adding something like this, right? And I think in the same breath, we get it. It's a business, right? They have to make money. And so anyways, those are my thoughts on it, right? Probably a little bit long-winded for this video, but you know, I would rather speak my mind and say how I feel when I see something like this, and how I connected to some things that are similar that I have experienced, rather than just saying like, okay, well, hey, here's the information, here's the intro, right? Decide what you will. Right? I don't mind sharing my thoughts. And it's never going to be in a way where you're ever going to hear me, and I always talk about this, right? I'm never going to come out and just badmouth, right, the game company. But I do think that it is fair to have constructive criticism, and to be able to have a respectful opinion, like we always try to, when it comes to things that they are doing in the game. Because I'd like to believe that, you know, a number of people in the community probably share a similar sentiment that I do. Or maybe they share the exact sentiment or a portion of the sentiment. And or they might have a different look. And that's completely fine as well. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Realized we kind of ended up getting into a little bit of a TED Talk / rant here at the end. But that is where I will leave you. As always, until next time, I'll catch you later.